Welcome to the Workplace Minute, powered by H3HR Advisors and sponsored by WorkHuman. Thanks for joining me for a quick update on what's important in the world of work. My name is Steve Boese. Today in the Workplace Minute, we're taking a closer look at something that, on the surface, sounds like a positive and long overdue reform, but once you get into the details, it raises some serious questions about hiring, fairness, and the role of politics in the workplace. It's the U.S. federal government's new merit hiring plan. It's a sweeping set of changes designed to reshape how federal jobs get filled. Let's break it down. Now, on a high level, the stated goal of this plan is pretty straightforward and frankly hard to argue with. The administration and the Office of Personnel Management say they want to make federal hiring faster, more skills-based, and more aligned with performance and efficiency. And if you've ever looked at the federal hiring process, you know there is real room for improvement. It's very slow, it's complex, it's overly bureaucratic, and it's often frustrating for candidates and hiring managers alike. So some of the changes in this plan are, from a pure HR and talent acquisition standpoint, pretty sensible. The plan introduces a 2-page resume limit, which is intended to cut down on the massive, often unwieldy resumes that federal applicants have historically been required to submit. It calls for the use of more technical assessments and alternative evaluation methods, which is something we talk about all the time in modern hiring. And it also aims to reduce reliance on self-assessment questionnaires, which are pretty long forms where candidates rate themselves as either experts or novices on different skills, which have long been criticized as just ineffective and very easy to game. There's also a clear push to reduce the time to hire with a target of under 80 days, which honestly is still ridiculously inefficient anyway, and to involve agency leadership more directly in the final hiring decisions. Again, on paper, these are all aligned with what many HR leaders in both the public or private sector would consider best practice, or at least moving towards best practice. But then we get to a different part of the plan, and the conversation shifts almost entirely. Under this merit hiring plan, applicants for many federal jobs, actually most of them, are going to be asked to respond to 4 short essay questions as a part of their application. And despite not being mandatory yet, as of April 2026, the essay questions have appeared on approximately 33,000 federal job postings, according to the Justice Department and Energy Department, representing about 1/4 of competitive federal applications since the new hiring plan was introduced. And while some of these 4 questions are fairly standard things, like asking about work ethic or describing how you might improve efficiency, one of them stands out in a way that has sparked very significant controversy. And I want to read that question in full because the exact wording matters. Here it is. Quote, "How would you help advance the President's executive orders and policy priorities in this role? Identify 1 or 2 relevant executive orders or policy initiatives that are significant to you and explain how you would help implement them if hired." So that's the question. And this is where what started as a conversation about hiring reforms becomes something much bigger and more alarming. Because for career civil service roles, jobs that are supposed to be nonpartisan, stable, and grounded in the idea of serving the public regardless of the political leadership at the moment, this question introduces potential ideological and political screening elements into the hiring process. Critics are calling this a loyalty test. Supporters might frame it as ensuring alignment with current policy direction. But regardless of how it's framed, it asks candidates to explicitly engage with and express support for the sitting president's agenda as part of getting a job in federal government. Now, to be fair, the Office of Personnel Management has issued guidance saying that responses to these questions are not supposed to be scored, and that applicants can't be disqualified for not answering them, and that agencies must not use them as ideological litmus tests. But here is where it gets complicated. Even if the answers are not formally scored, they're going to be read, and they can be interpreted, and almost certainly they're going to influence perceptions. And in a hiring process where final candidate selections could involve senior leadership review, it's not hard to imagine how responses to this question, or even the decision not to respond, could shape the hiring decision. And that's really the core issue. In HR, we talk all the time about structured, fair, and job-related hiring processes. We talk about consistency, relevance, and trying to eliminate bias. We always work hard to ensure that hiring decisions are based on the candidate's ability to perform the job, not anything about their personal beliefs or any perceived. This question cuts directly against all of those principles, because the answer to this question is not about your skills or your experience. It's not even really about judgment in the context of the role you're applying to. It's about signaling alignment with political priorities. And that's a very different kind of evaluation. And there are definitely legal questions here. Unions and advocacy groups have already filed lawsuits arguing that this kind of a question could violate First Amendment protections by compelling speech or enabling viewpoint discrimination. And government oversight bodies, they've stopped short of declaring it an illegal question, but they've acknowledged the risks and the need for strict safeguards. But beyond the legal debates, there's a practical impact to what we're starting to see here. Reports are suggesting that some potential applicants are reconsidering whether to apply for federal jobs at all because of this question, and others are unsure how to respond or whether responding honestly might hurt their chances. And in a labor where attracting talent to public service has always been a challenge, adding uncertainty and perceived risk into the application process is not going to help. So what we end up with is a plan that contains some positive and often overdue hiring reforms, but also introduces an element that definitely undermines trust in the fairness and neutrality of the process. So I want you to leave thinking about this. Maybe it's a thought experiment. I think it highlights, though, how significant the issue is. What if the federal government takes this same question and applies it not just to new applicants, but to all the existing federal employees right now? What if millions of current civil servants were asked to explain how they plan to advance the current president's policy priorities? And that response, or maybe a lack of response, might influence their standing, their advancement, or even their continued employment. That's a real chilling scenario, and it underscores why the line between merit-based hiring and political alignment needs to be very clearly defined and very carefully protected. Because once that line starts to blur, it's not about the hiring process really anymore. We're talking about the fundamental nature of public service work. Merit hiring is a goal that most HR leaders absolutely support. Faster processes, better assessments, more relevant evaluation methods. These are all steps in the right direction, but merit hiring must remain just that, merit-based, grounded in skills, capability, integrity, and the ability to serve the public effectively, regardless of political leanings or leadership. Allegiance to one political leader's agenda should never be a requirement of public service. And as this plan moves forward, and as the legal challenges and the real-world implementation of this plan continues to unfold, it's going to be important to watch not just what the policy says, but how it actually begins to be used. Because in hiring, like so many other things, the intent really matters, but the execution matters more. That's it for the show today. A big thank you to WorkHuman for supporting the Workplace Minute. Be sure to subscribe to the HR Happy Hour Network on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Steve Boese, and this has been the Workplace Minute from H3 Advisors.